Oh,
It's
yeah.
early morning here.
Oh,
Yeah, it's on the west coast of the United States. It's 3 hours behind Eastern
of
Standard Time.
course. Of course.
Relatively early here in the morning. I'm usually up. If not working, I'm off today. I'm typically up catching up on reading. I'm an avid reader, so I try to stay ahead of my reading as best I can. Thank you for inviting me in, and thank you for being here.
Okay. Yeah, you're so welcome. Good morning. We are live streaming and just want to talk about our lives on this earth as dark skinned people, as part of the African race. What about us? Were we born? There are sometimes you actually have to ask, you have to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself some tough questions, and you cannot be afraid of the answers because you beg the the universe, your higher self, that spirit thing that you don't see. You just hope and pray that when you ask a question that you can receive an answer, or there's a pointing in a direction where you should go to seek answers. You know, they say when the student is ready, the master would appear. And I found that that has always, it, never in my life have I wanted to know something and it not happen. It always happens. And this thing about slavery, when they are saying that black people were, how they usually say 500 years in slavery or whatever, where did they get that 500 years from? And is it really 500? Is it really 500 years, or were we enslaved from the get-go? Anytime you see great enterprise, business, and pyramids, and anytime you see structures, were they slaves? Because what kind of payment did they use at that time? But from my vantage point, and like I always say, I have to see a pattern. And from my vantage point, whenever something big is happening, whenever there's a newness, whenever there is a creation of sort, you need slaves. And if 6,000 years ago, for instance, if they say that that's when the pyramids appeared, or even maybe before that in history, even before written history, I'm I'm feeling that black people were slaves then. Black people were used. Our bones were always aching and our backs were always bent, and I have a feeling that we were always being used for something. What feelings do you get? And this is something that I'm very interested in, and I do become passionate when I am interested in something, but it's something that really, really tantalizes my brain. And I don't understand how people would not want to know what is the purpose. What is our purpose on earth? Are we just supposed to work for someone, and once we use the bathroom, we know our colon is working, we know our bodies are working, and just as long as the eyesight is working, we can read signs off the street, and we can get to where point A and B. Is that what we're here for? Just to be minions? Just to be pawns on a game, a chessboard game? What are we here for? Why do we work 5 days a week, 6 days a week? Why don't we just work to make sure that everything is okay with the world and our neighbors, and then we have maybe 5 days off to meditate and to think and to dream and to wonder, and to just be ourselves? When I look at this, it really could be upsetting, but I always check my emotional self, and I try to be very balanced. But it's something that really interests me, and I think that when they talk about 500 years of slavery and black, I think that they're trying to placate us black people. I think they're trying not to lift that veil. They just do not want us to know our history. And what is our history from the little bits and pieces? Because you sent me something yesterday, Victor, thank you. But when you get those little bits and pieces and you see that the whole world had a piece of us, everybody in the world that built anything monumental and anything that's grandiose, whatever, they had a piece of us, and a piece of us meaning slaves, black people built those things. So you have to have a reasonable mind, and you have to come to some sort of conclusion that, yeah, black people were probably put here to be slaves. Maybe the Garden of Eden ushered us in. I don't know. Maybe we came in before. But we have to start really turning over tables, and we have to start burning libraries and going into the basement where they hide those secret books. And we have to really start yearning and salivating, and it will come to us. Things would open up to us. A book will fall when we go to the library, and the page will be there for us to read. But we have to want to know our history. We have to want to know the truth about why we are here. And I say we, meaning black people, because we let other people, as you always know, when we talk about Barbados, we said let other people figure out their stuff. When we talk about black people, let other people figure out their stuff. So what do you think, Victor?
I believe that across the vast expanse of time um, that black people were not always conditioned to be slaves. I believe that based on history, that in antiquity, if you were to read people like Sheikh Anta Diop, the great Senegalese writer, historian, philosopher, um, the African origins, um, written by Diop. Anything written by Diop. If you read Chancellor Williams, if you read the great Guyanese Ivan Van Sertima, if you read the greats, you read Dr. Eric Williams, you read the greats. If you read Dr. Hilary Beckles, you read the greats. You read the greats. If you read the greats, it shows us that we came from people who were rulers of kingdoms and dynasties, people who explored the earth for centuries. But along the way, there was an exodus from the knowledge base of black people, from the knowledge base of Timbuktu and the great writings and scripts, from the origins of the great Mansa Musa in Timbuktu, from the origins of the great first pharaoh of Egypt, Menes, spelled Menes. If we look into these great teachings and writings, we understand that black people were not always chattel slavery. We were not. However, from where we were to where we are now, there was a direct correlation of people trying to destroy our history, to relegate us to second class citizenship, and a lot has been made of that, all for the good, as it relates to the 21st century. Our people have played, if not the most pivotal role in the existence of humanity, certainly one of the most pivotal roles in the existence of humanity. And to that, we don't need to apologize to anyone. We have we have walked with our heads high, even when we were placed in positions that compromised our integrity and our ethics and our spirituality. But we're the most spiritual human beings on the planet Earth, the most spiritual. No group of people could have survived what we were placed in and survived. No other race could have done it.
So
No other group of people could have done
when
it.
did you think the Exodus happened? When did you think that fall happened within our race and within our kingdom and within our great people? When did you think that? When do you think that fall happened, and what caused it? Do you have any idea?
I do not align to the dispensation of the clerics, who, from a historical perspective, assumed that there was an exodus from Egypt and an exodus from ourselves. I believe in Egyptology to its max, to the max. I believe that the Heru, which means God in antiquity, lies within each and every human being on the planet Earth, more especially within the DNA of black people. So I do not believe in a system premised on the Nicene Creed, because we know that the Nicene Creed, 535 AD, was a creed made up of people who, for one reason or another, they wanted to usher in a new thinking, a Renaissance thinking in Europe. So we cannot never ascribe to European history as it relates predominantly to black people, because European history is the reason why the origins of slavery, the enslavement of black people has been promulgated, and there has been no ability to desist from that till this day. So I can never ever believe in the Nicene theory and the theory that's held high in the Vatican and other places in Europe relative to religion. I believe that European religion, every religious entity has failed black people. Judaism, massive failure. Islam, massive failure. But Christianity has been probably the most hideous promoter of the destruction the destruction of the origins of antiquity and African civilization. That has come about at the hands of Christianity. Wherever black people have been and white people have been there, whether they've gotten there first or they've gotten there at the same time as black people, it has always been white on top, black on the bottom. And religions have not served black people well at all. We learned from them. The great Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya said that when Europeans came into Kenya, the Kenyans had the land, the Europeans had the Bible. When the Europeans left Kenya, the Kenyans had the Bible and the Europeans had the land. There's always been a determination by white people or people who are defined lighter than black, rather through miscegenation or not, to take from black people that which they did not earn themselves. So it's always been a system like that. So to talk about some theory of an exodus from Egypt or an exodus from Africa, the only exodus I know happened in the belly of slave ships, ran by
I
Europeans,
wasn't talking about.
ran by
I
Europeans.
wasn't saying it in that particular vein.
Mm.
When I say what I said, and I can't even remember the words I used at this point. But when I talk about a fall, I mean the situation we're in now, where we go to the white man for work, most, and even if a black person is making millions, the apparatus that they are part of is white. It's white controlled, and they're allowed there as entertainers or for whatever reason. But we do know that in the background there's a white man, and I just wonder if we came from kings and queens and something that was so resplendent. When did that go away? Because even in Africa, our motherland, they have to fight to get farmers that own like a billion square miles of land. I mean, not a little acre here and there. The white farmers in Zimbabwe and other places in Africa, they own tons of land, and we see that they are being dispossessed and being put out, and certain things are happening in certain parts. But when was all that taken away from us? How was it allowed? And I don't know if you saw the blog last night, but let's look at America, for instance. There's no way that when they drop bombs or whatever happened at 9/11, there's no conspiracy. We just going along with what they said. There was a war. America lost 2,600 people in the World Trade building, and firemen and other people, total about that amount, maybe under 3,000. And there was a war, and still the presence of that war still exists you know what, 15 years later, that was 2001, it's 2000, and it's still going on. America is still around the world roughing people up because towers fell. And my question, not to you, but this is just something that I put out there because I don't think that one particular person has the answers. We can just talk and just reason within ourselves. But if after millions, I mean close to genocide, and the ones that remain were broken and unwary and dispossessed and in strange lands and had to adopt different ideologies and different religions and different ways of getting along, and why didn't Africa, as big and powerful as it could have been and should have been and was, why didn't they start a war? We know that wars usually start out in Europe, but what about Africa? Africa was just as big and powerful and had just as much natural resources and bright people, that can build and that can create. Everything started and has a place in Africa as we can see. So why would a place like that allow so many Africans, not one or two, not 2,000, not 3,000, millions upon millions, be taken as slaves to work for the white man, and for the white man to shit all over them and cut their noses off and to relegate them to be animals? Why didn't they start a war? Not a question, just we're just talking. And when I spoke about the Exodus per se, or the fall, and I asked you if you had any idea when that happened, I wasn't hoping that you will rely on biblical texts. I was just wondering if you had an idea when the pharaohs and all the gods and all the whoever else, the shamans and whoever else that were big and bad and powerful in Africa, what happened to them? What
What
happened?
what happened to them? What happened to them was the very same thing that happened to us. They were trusting, they were spiritual, they were giving. Every group of people on the planet Earth that are black, brown, yellow, if they contain their DNA contains one drop of melanin, they have accepted invaders. And once you accept so-called liberators in your country and they come in, they're no longer invitees, now they are invaders. And they come bearing no good for you as a whole. Because as the saying goes, a conquering heart can hold no love. If you conquer, you have no love for the people who are conquered. So what happened in antiquity is the same thing that happened thousands of years later. The conquered were dispossessed, as you said, relegated to slave pits and slave dungeons, as you said, and the results are to be seen all over the world today. They went there, whether it be Alexander the Greek, um, for whom Alexandria, Egypt, has been named. He went there as a person who was invited, and he ended up being a conqueror. He ended up overstaying his welcome completely. So at the end of the day, they come in invited, and that is why in antiquity the ancient Egyptians went to a system known as the Metu Neter, Metuneter, and not hieroglyphics as the Greek. Hieroglyphics is a Greek word, as the Greeks said, because they knew that once they invited these people in, once they gave them, showed them an ambiance of decency, allowed them to become part of culture, and to teach them that the intentions that they had was to pillage, rape, and destroy. That's always been the way that Europeans have done their business. From the inception of going across the Eurasian steppes during the Ice Age to now, wherever they have gone, they have inflicted damage on the local people, on the cultures, no matter where they've gone in the world, Sherry. Wherever they've gone, the people have fallen prey, have become susceptible either by diseases that white people brought there or by just an intent by white people, Europeans, to enslave the local masses, period, wherever they've gone. And that's not changed ever. So to answer your question, not from, I understand what you're saying, not from a biblical perspective, but I illuminated the biblical part of it because they came with the Bible in one hand and a gun in the next. The great Dr. Eric Williams said in his book, from Columbus to Castro, first they fell on their knees, then they fell on the Aborigines. So at the end of the day, they have come with an intent to dispossess not only in the physical realm, but to control. If you control spiritually, you control everything. And that's what they have done. They have made an art out of demonizing people of color, melanated people, and controlling everything in the environment that surrounds them. You hardly ever hear any white man, any European in America give credit to Native Americans who they came and found here. Now they've turned on Mexicans, right? But the largest states in the United States of America once belonged to Mexico: Texas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, right? They were all part of Mexico, right? Santa Anna lost, and as a result of Santa Anna having lost in a war with the United States, that's how we've come to gain the states of Texas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, right? So at the end of the day, it's never been an attempt for them to assimilate within any culture. Whenever they have come, wherever they have gone, they have raped, pillaged, destroyed, and it's never been the same after they have left. Period.
I just think when they talk about missing links, the missing link is not only genetics. It's not. It's not only where did we stop being the chimpanzee and become upright walking man. Where did we come down from the tree and started walking on our 2 feet? I don't think that's the only missing link that we need to think about. I think there are missing links in history, and when you try to move from one point of view to the next, there are things missing. It does not make sense because when you talk and say 500 years of slavery, I've listened to people in those protesting mobs and lines and on TV, and when they have that microphone, 500 years and this and that and five. But then you look at something else and it says, well, before the Europeans had your black asses, you were slave to these particular people, and before those particular people had you as slaves, you were slaves to someone else, and it seems as though that there's a long history of black people being enslaved, and I don't know if it's the color of the skin that makes them tolerant to the sun, that they can stay, or if they're stronger. I don't know if it's that, or were we created in a lab. We hear those words being put into our consciousness now when we hear Dr. Beckles speak about Barbados being an experiment, a lab, an incubation period of moving from here to there, moving from human to not so human. So we're hearing these words, and words that we know. When you hear incubator, you've heard that word before for a newborn baby that probably is not so strong, or whatever it is you need to incubate. And you've heard of experimentation, and you know that there are labs where they have all sorts of animals and all kinds of experimentation. And there was the Tuskegee Airmen, where we know that there was experimentation to see how syphilis, how quickly it grew and how it manifested. And there were black people picked to conduct that experiment. So we know of experimentations and we know what labs are. So these are words that we know, but when someone can bring that to your doorstep, Victor, when it comes to your doorstep, you have to look for missing links. You have to look. You say, wait. Yeah, I know of labs. I know that there may be labs that we may not even know about. We know of the CDC, and there are labs and there are scientists all over the place. But on my doorstep, in my home, I was
Seminally, though, we have to understand that the major scripted difference between white people and black people simply is this. White folks plan for generations yet unborn. You understand? They plan for generations yet unborn. And somewhere along the way, we have to take responsibility not for everything that has happened to us, but for things that we can control, things that's within our own purview. We have to be able to take control for those things and indeed plan for generations yet unborn. While we are playing with PlayStations, sitting around in living rooms, dining rooms, college dorms, playing with PlayStations, white men are building space stations. We have to change the consciousness of our intellect and our spirituality as we look to move forward in the 21st century. Because guess what? We are becoming as extinct as the great African elephant. We really are. The crosshairs of survivability are on us, black people as a whole. And we have to change the way our narrative can be changed only by us. We are invictus, the captains of our own ships and the masters of our own destinies. Until we are able to tweak those things and change those things, until we're able to look into ourselves and delineate our own histories and juxtapose how we are living now with how our ancestors lived back then and why our ancestors did what they did back then so that we can do what we are able to do today. Until we're able to change that, we're always going to have question marks after everything. And I believe that we are set at a precipice that's very pivotal to our survival in the way we think, in the way we approach and solve issues. No longer can we afford to merely react to everything. We need definitive thinkers, people who wake up every day with a consciousness of a Malcolm X, the consciousness of a David Walker, who back then during the days of the early part of the American Revolution, he was such a great thinker. The David Walker, he wrote a book called The Appeal, that he was able to challenge Thomas Jefferson, an intellectual in his day, about the woefulness, the woes of slavery. And we need to be able to think like Marcus Garvey thought. We need to be able to think like Martin Luther King Jr. and other great thinkers thought. We need to be able to come to the table to offer ourselves, our families, our communities, our races a fighting chance. Without that, we are marginalized into nothingness. We wake up every day, just chug along, exchange our labor for a fee, and we are no different than being 21st century sharecroppers. That's all we are every single day. We have to forge ahead to change our destinies. We have to stand up for something. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. As simple as that. Why are we living on our knees when we've been given so much? We already know the history of our ancestors. That history now stands right in our path. Right in our path. That same pathway that tropical storm took to come to Barbados is the same pathway that those slave ships took to bring our ancestors on this triangular slave route from Africa to the Caribbean. Isn't that amazing?
yeah.
We have all of this information right at our fingertips, yet we muster not the courage. We muster not the courage to do what should rightfully be done. So, in there, in us, It's the truth. Will we dare ourselves to stand and face our truths and to stand for what we believe? Will we do that?
What I think is an incredible injustice, and like I've always said, if I didn't live and witness this, I would not believe it. Let's say I was born 50 years from now and someone said, "With such and such happened back in 2016 or what 2000, whatever." I will not believe it. What I think is the greatest injustice is not teaching black people their history, trying to hide it, trying to cover it over so it doesn't sound so bad. I think that is the worst thing. And I say shame. Shame on all the historians, shame on all the history teachers in the islands and in America and in places where we have remnants, we have children of those slaves. Shame on those people that had a book and didn't push it and they say, "Here, read this book. This book should be part of the curriculum in history classes, in African studies." And I don't know if you've been to, or if you're going to go to the new museum, the African museum that they just erected at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. But it's a travesty. It's a travesty. And we can talk about this offline because, I'll wait for you to bring yourself abreast with that. But it's a travesty when you go and you see Flavor Flav with the big clock. I don't know if you know of that black guy with all the gold teeth and the big clock he had around his neck. When he's in there as what is he? What do we look at him and take from that? Seeing that in a museum that was built in 2016, they are insulting black people constantly. We are constantly being shown that we don't matter. We don't matter.
We have a national treasure right in Barbados. There's nobody in Barbados that I care particularly to ever want to meet, to shake their hand, to hug, more than Dr. Hilary Beckles. We have a national treasure. We have a national treasure. We have national treasures in the Caribbean. We've had people who have been teaching all their lives. That no longer can we blame anybody for not learning except ourselves. The opportunity to learn. Information doubles every 18 months, Sherry. 18 months from now, what we knew today would have doubled already. So the possibility to learn is there for those who want to learn. If people are slothful and they do not present themselves to the educational opportunities that exist out there today, you can't blame anybody else except yourself. I'm sorry. As far as the museum there in Washington, D.C., this country was replete with great writers, great historians, great storytellers who sat, whether it was on a stoop somewhere, whether it was in a row house somewhere, whether it was down south in slave quarters somewhere, to teach. But you can't teach people who don't want to learn. You cannot. I mean,
But
the
sometimes,
great thing about
but sometimes, not sometimes, Victor. Sometimes you don't know. You need to be prompted to think. Sometimes, if you are coming up in a certain community, you are not even prompted to think of something. And if you don't think about that one thing, it doesn't prompt you to think of other things that would lead you in that particular direction. Sometimes we could be talking and you will say, "You know what? I never even thought about that before." So it's like if you are not open, if you're not having open discussions, you don't even know what you don't know. You don't even know that you should be thinking what you don't even know you should be thinking. So to say that people need to have a push for the history, what we need are elders and parents and educators who teach you how to start to address everything, even think about your thoughts. Why am I not thinking about this? Or why, when I hear this, I fall asleep, or I get tired, or I want to eat? Sometimes when you hear new information, it's so incredible and it may be very pertinent to you, and your background that you, because black people don't write their histories, they don't tell stories, they don't write diaries for their children to say, well, this is a diary that my mom or my dad left. You just have to go by hearsay or whatever. But if you are prompted as a child to think and to open up doors and windows to find more information, yes, you can get somewhere because you're taught to think. But a
Let, let,
lot,
let me let me let me let me let me let me
okay,
let me tell you something.
okay.
I know I can't speak for anybody else. As a child growing up in Barbados, I flunked the 11 plus exam, and I went to a school called Ellerslie Secondary School in Black Rock. And I met some of the most amazing teachers you could want to ever meet anywhere at that school. Some of the most amazing human beings. And you know what, Sherry Veronica? They were not that much older than me. There was a man by the name of, he's still alive, so not was. There's a man by the name of Tony Olton. And Tony Olton was my teacher. And he would buy lunch out of his pocket for school children. For me. He would take me up Christchurch to the Toastmasters. There was a Toastmasters club up in Christchurch because he saw that speaking was something that I liked. And he invested time. There are teachers in Barbados who invest time in their children scholastically to get them to the point to engender in that specific child or children the capacity to understand the way that the world runs. But let me say something equally diametrical to that. A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. I want to repeat that, not because anyone here is ignorant, but because I believe that it is seminal to understanding why we behave the way we behave. A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. Once a person is convinced against their will, as soon as that person walks away from you, they go back, they revert to doing what they've done before. And we've got to understand that at the end of the day, there is no reason today in 2016, the year is 2016, why we should be in the United States especially be complaining about education and lack of knowledge. Brown versus the Board of Education, 1954, facilitated for people to go to school in a relatively desegregated situation to learn, to go to college to learn. It took that, right? People went to the Supreme Court of these United States, and that decision became part of the constitutional prescribed of the United States. Yet today, we have people refusing to go to school, children refusing to go get a high school diploma. In the black community, people refusing to take and learn in a desegregated society, right?
But there are
So who are we
people,
to blame?
there are people who will come. Well, I don't have their numbers, so they won't come. But there are people that you can find on radio who would say that desegregation was the worst thing that could have ever happened to black people, because although they fought for it, it still is not really there. The whites still want to be separate, they still think differently, they still move differently, they still see black people as being different. And had black people stayed with black people and taught black people what they needed to be taught, because once they became segregated, then they had to be under the purviews of whatever the curriculum was for the white children. You can't have the NIGGERS learning something that may not be too good for them. So some people would say that the desegregation was not good for black people. And also from that perspective, they would say, because they say, why would you want to sit next to someone that don't want you next to them? Why would you want to go to a neighborhood where you're not welcome? Why would you want to be part of any group that does not see you as equal? And like I said, there are a lot of people that, when you go back to the civil rights movement, I'm not saying that they disrespected Martin Luther King. That's not here or there. We're not saying that. But what we're saying is that sometimes it's best to create your own space, like the Cubans did, like we talked about that yesterday. We know the Jews, the Jews are all up in Congress and all over the own New York City. So sometimes it's best to say, you know what? They don't like us. Let's not like them. And I'm famous for that. If you don't like me, I can hate you more than you can hate me. It's just my nature. You cannot not like me worse than I not like you, because if you think that I'm not up to speed and I'm not someone that you can talk to, I start to degrade you just as fast and just as bad. So you and I will never meet if you think that way about me, because I would have already cut your legs off and cut your neck off, and you will cease to exist. So that's something that a lot of people think that black people need to get in them. They need to understand you are not wanted in certain neighborhoods, and there's a
Can I ask you a question? The
yes.
highest this is a question. The highest educational achievement levels met in the United States and Europe are to be found to be held by whom?
You just tell me. I don't want to guess.
I tell you, it's held by Africans, people from the continent of Africa. After that, do you know the highest educational achievement rates? The rates for those are held by Asians and people from the Caribbean in this America. In this America. So my point is
But
that
you'll have to provide those facts after the show. But go ahead.
my point is, despite what has been done to black people and brown people and red people in the United States of America, whether it has been done prior, pre Brown versus the Board of Education or post Brown versus the Board of Education, that the top educational achievers in America are not white folks. It's people of African, black people from the continent of Africa, followed by Asians, followed by West
But
Indians.
that's strange,
New,
because America is 12% African black people, so that would be kind of strange, and most of them are in jails. A lot of young people are in jail, so that I will have to see that, but
yep.
not doubting it. I'm just saying I will have to see the stats on that. But then again, I have been to every museum they have in in New York City. I have been to. I don't know if you've ever taken a tour of the CDC and seen and been around the scientists there. They're mostly white, and I've been to the Space Center, Kennedy Space Center. You've been all over. When you go to places and when you look at Congress, and when you look at, I don't know if you look at Parliament, the congressional meetings on those government channels that they have on TV, but mostly white. And even when you go to certain cities and let's say they have a black mayor, let's say that people elected a black mayor or a black whatever, the council that surrounds that black person is predominantly white. So it's an uphill battle no matter what. And like you said, if most people who are getting education and graduated from colleges are black people, and black people are only 12%, and I know the Cubans are up there, I know Jews are up there, and I know that white people, their children are at Yale and at Stanford and other Ivy League schools, and there are high percentages of them graduated from schools. I will have to see what you just. I will have to see that. I will have to see that. Those stats.
Yep. The facts are out there. And in fact, when Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House back in the 1990s, he applauded West Indians on their work ethic in the United States of America. That's also part of his speech is also part of the Library of Congress, when he applauded the work ethic of West Indians who come here and outshine people who were born in this country. You understand? I'm not pitting one against the
No,
next.
but I don't
All I'm
understand.
saying,
No, but I don't understand.
all I'm saying is that there's a possibility for us as a race of people to navigate the torrents, the the waterways of the world,
And
no matter
but if Newt Gingrich,
how.
is complimenting West Indians for their work ethic. I don't know. Is he complimenting the maids in his house, the people who clean the shit off his toilet? Because
Well,
those.
I
I'm
mean,
not arguing with
yeah,
you.
we could
Just
go, we
but
could go out
no,
there.
no,
We
no.
could
But
probably,
let me just say
we,
what I have to say. Newt Gingrich
uh,
is you could actually see him with a KKK mask on his head at rallies. I mean, I've never seen it. I don't know that about him. But when you look at him, just look at, you can actually see him in a white cape and a white mask and at rallies, and he's all like white power. That's what you see when you see a Newt Gingrich. And when they start to compliment a black person, and when black people think that they're assimilating, and because all they're doing is being good technicians, what they're doing is doing the work for the white man and doing it well, instead of going and building their own shit, doing their own thing. What they're doing is going to the schools and becoming very good technicians. They are able to go to the white man's place of business or his house, and whatever they do well. I take that as an insult when he starts to say
let me
that.
ask you a question then. How many black people out there, and I include myself in this question.
But I don't. Okay, I
Um,
would rather you not ask me questions. If you have a statement or if you have an opinion.
yeah, I'm saying that you just lumped in Newt Gingrich, and that's
But
why
I
I'm
didn't. But
saying
I didn't ask you a
I
question.
can't speak for Newt Gingrich, and that's not what I'm here to do.
Right.
But I was just saying that what Newt Gingrich did was he he saw something and he complimented it, and I'm not willing to tear that down. I'm willing to let that stand the test of time, whether he was right or wrong. But at the same point in time, let me make a statement then. I hear a lot of black people talk about what we don't have happening in our specific communities. And I wonder about that. I wonder. Because from a standpoint of other black people reaching back and helping others, I don't see that. I see people talking. Talk is cheap as hell. If we are not willing to go back there, if we're not willing to take a bullet, if we're not willing to suffer with somebody, shut the hell up. That's what I think. Because at the end of the day, people need help. People need help. How else they going to survive in a world like this? A woman who is working at a fast food joint with 3 or 4 children at home, very limited resources. She's forced to go out there and work every single day or prostitute herself. How else then is she going to do it with limited education and everybody telling her what she needs to do and how she needs to do it? And those are the things that I find offensive to me, right? Somebody got to be the maid. Somebody got to clean up after somebody else. My mother came to this country from Barbados. She had to go be a maid in people's places in order that we can go to school. Her children can go to school. Should I look down my nose on that? Should I look down my nose on that? I just want somebody out there. I want somebody out there to answer me.
No, we're not talking about looking down anyone. We were talking about Newt Gingrich, and I'm saying that if a white man that I see as being white, race, powerful, and Ku Klux Klanish, says that a black person or compliment any particular person that of the black race, that means that they're doing a very good job for him. That's all I'm saying. They're doing a very good job
But
for
they
him.
may not be.
It
But
makes
they
it,
may
it makes
not
his
be doing
they're
a very
making
good
they're
job
making
with
his
it.
life easier. That's all I'm saying.
They may not be. He may be complimenting. I mean, I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. He may just be complimenting something that they've done that he has noticed. I mean, I'm not here to say that all black people are good and all white people are bad.
We're not
I'm
saying
not here to
that.
make that. I'm not here to make that argument.
Right.
I'm just here to say what history has shown me based on my experience. And I understand that I can't view the world through your lenses, neither can you view the world through mine. But what I'm saying is that we all have a place from which we have to start. And we have to get from one place to the next place to the next place. Everybody can be a doctor, lawyer, or Indian chief. Everybody can. So we have to take that not with a grain of salt. We have to look at that and adjust the way that we think towards each one reaching one, each one teaching one.
Yeah.
The problem within my race, as I see it, is that we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
And I look at myself internally. What can Victor do to reach another person that looks like me, to keep that person from committing an act of violence on themselves or someone else? What am I doing spiritually now to help that person, to pull them up? If all I'm doing is just tearing them down, then what am I doing? I'm tearing them down. I'm
Yeah.
not doing nothing. I'm not helping them to pull themselves up to get to a place where they're able to be self sufficient and feel good about themselves. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because someone is here telling me that they were not talking about African Americans when they were talking about the high, when you quoted the Africans who were doing well in colleges, they were
I wasn't speaking about African Americans. I never said African
no, no, I know,
Americans.
no, I know. I'm just saying. I'm reading what someone sending me here. Yeah, they were talking about African immigrants, and I was wondering what's the difference
Mm-hmm.
between. I just don't. Yeah, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, you have cases of success in black communities all around us if people would just look.
Right.
But most of the times people don't look. They paint with a broad brush. They do not. They cast a broad net. They don't do research. And I'm glad that that person sent you that note
Right. No,
because
it's a
oftentimes what? Yeah.
Atlanta night something, some kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
they sent me
Yeah.
a thing, a link.
Yeah. Yeah. We've continuously punched above our weight. Black people in this America and black people in Europe. We've constantly punched above our weight.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always been doing good. I mean, Barbadians educationally have done extremely well in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely well. I mean, the first black man to be president of Oxford University Student Union was a Barbadian,
Right.
J. Cameron Tudor. J. Cameron Tudor. A place where he wasn't even born. This man goes to Oxford and he's a president. That's significant. I mean, that's a start. It may not mean a lot to a lot of people, but it's a start.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, we just build upon starts. We just need to be positive enough to build upon starts. Most people tear down. And I noticed that most of the people who tear down never build. They're not builders. People who demolish typically are not apprised with the ability to build. Let's start being builders, people. Wake up. It's a new day. Stop being builders. Stop tearing down. Any asshole can tear down, but it's who can build. Next time you're out there, stand under a bridge. Look at it. It took a whole lot of mathematical calculus to build that bridge. All it takes is a few sticks of dynamite and an asshole to tear it down. Let's start building. If we're not going to build, we need to shut up. That's how I look at it. Don't call me, talk to me if you're not a builder. All you're going to do is demolish. Any asshole could demolish. So that's how I look at that. Let's build. We got something to build on. We're gonna point fingers at the white man forever and say the white man did this, the white man did. Let's go past that bullshit. Let's start building. That's what we need to do. Come on.
Right.
Who is stopping black people today? High school dropout rates. High school dropout rates. Can't conjugate a verb. Who's stopping black people but black people? The enemy's within. The enemy's not without. The enemy's within. Let's stop killing each other in these streets. Let's stop disrespecting our women. Women, stop disrespecting your men. Let's go back to really looking at the family and holding the family sacred No, we got some hope.
Yeah,
Let's build on that.
this person that's writing in is saying that the thing about Africans and their knowledge base is that they adopt other people's ideologies and forget about their own. He said, and he's saying that you don't see that with other races. Like the Cubans will still keep their thing, whatever it is within their, whatever they left Cuba with, they bring with them. And we do know that other, like the Asians and other people, they eat and they keep their own little idiosyncrasies and everything else that is about them that is Asian, you could tell. But he is saying that the thing about Africans, black people, is like they seem to want to forget what they are and where they came from and their own history, just the history of what they came through and what their ancestors came through, and just everything that is important they seem to want to forget. And that's where assimilation, as I was talking to you about earlier, when some,
And I can agree. And I can agree with that argument. And I will agree with that argument wholeheartedly. Will agree with that argument. That traditional Africans, the African traditions are let go for Western cultures and for Western educated way of life. Once they get here, yep, I agree with that. You have no disagreement with me about that. And most of that is kept here. And I will agree with you, Sherry, and it's not
not
returned to the
me, me.
continent of
I'm
Africa.
reading. I'm reading something that. But remember, when I was talking earlier about assimilation, and I've heard other black people talking about that, saying maybe we should just say to ourselves and remember our history and where we came from, and keep. If we do voodoo, keep on doing the voodoo. If we
Right,
whatever we do,
right,
Santeria. If that's what our religion, just keep on doing the, cut off the chicken head and let's do our Santeria.
right, right. But a lot of times we don't want to do that because it's not the whiteness that we want to own does not permit us to do that. So I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But maybe then now we can have a conversation. Well, why have you abandoned the shiki for a suit and a tie? Why have you abandoned your Africanness, the thing that got you to where you are for? And by the way, Europeans are wanting to adopt Africa more than Africans want to adopt Africa. Sad. I mean, you should need a Clinton Foundation or this or that in Africa. We have
Exactly.
multi-millionaire Africans running all over the place.
Exactly.
You shouldn't, but you do. You do because people forget where they come from. They forget who they are.
No,
You understand?
yeah, they're saying black people have that trait of trying to forget where they came from, their history. You don't find that in the Jewish community. The Jews, they have their temples, their synagogues, or whatever. Jews keep their stuff going. They keep everything going. Even the Bible, their book, the Old Testament, and everything they have. But then you see, like you were saying, the worst thing that happened to black people was the Bible. Why would they take someone else's religion? That was the worst thing. And you said it. That was the worst thing that black people could have ever done. Take someone else's religion. But that's the thing about black people. They take everything. It's like what they have, they don't treasure. It's like not important. They rather be like someone else. And this is where assimilation and desegregation comes in again. They're always trying to be up underneath somebody instead of just doing your own thing. Just do your own thing.
Yeah, I agree with you totally on that. I think that a lot of times, you have Europeans, you have black people from Africa, from the African diaspora that live in Europe and United States, Canada, and Australia that are more white than
You're
in those
breaking up.
places.
You're breaking up. I don't know why.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, you broke up there. You just broke up there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, a lot of times, yeah, you have people from Africa, I said, that live in Europe and those places that they're more white than people who are indigenous to those places.
Yeah,
So
this person is saying that even the Jews do not adopt the educational system. They have their own system of teaching their people, and that's what they use. They say they don't even acknowledge the American education system. So it's just very strange how black people are so easy to be, I would call it corrupted, because if you're moving away from who you are, there's a kind of a corruption, within yourself. It's like moving a tree from where it started and putting it somewhere else. You have to work really hard to get that tree to
All you
grow.
gotta do is turn into CNN or any of the American news entity out there, and you see how even sisters that appear on there, brothers that appear on there that are dark in complexion, they tend to lighten themselves to become
Oh
what
yeah.
the mass media,
Oh
what the
yeah.
system really
Oh
wants.
yeah.
The
Oh yeah.
system,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
They do the
the
Mike
system doesn't really want to look at a dark skinned person. It doesn't.
They do the Michael Jackson like, they don't do Ambi and that kind of stuff. They don't do the they don't go to the department store. They don't use that type. They do the heavy duty type lightning. Okay.
Michael Jackson type of stuff. Yep, they sure do. Yep.
They go to the
They don't
they
feel like
go
me
they
no
go to
more,
the
Jerry.
doctors and get the real, they get the real stuff.
Yeah, they get that Michael Jackson stuff and it's all over them, man. They
Yeah.
don't want to be. No, they sure as hell don't. So I mean, everywhere. Go back to your argument. Go back to our discussion. Go back to what we can lay out in front of anybody. And I don't think too many people can dispute what you said. Globally, everywhere where you go, white on top, black on the bottom, black people kicking, struggling, trying to survive, having to make changes to their
So
identities in order to.
I think we may have the crux of the problem, though. I think maybe it's because we're trying to assimilate. You see, we were talking, not even thinking that we were going to solve one slight problem, and I think we have identified an area where we can focus on, and that is maybe we shouldn't try to assimilate. But then again, we are gone. We don't even know what Africa is all about, because we're so far removed from that.
Completely. And I don't believe that most Africans on the continent of Africa will be very accepting of brothers and sisters from
Oh
the
yeah,
Caribbean.
I know.
No, they want us back. They treat us like we are already traitors to them, and they're the
Exactly.
ones who captured us, sold us into slavery, and they act. When you meet them, a lot of times they give you that attitude as if you are responsible for being over here in this place. And I'm
Right.
like, what the hell? And I'm not your enemy, and you are not mine. But let's talk about what your ancestors did to mine. Let's bring that into perspective here.
And another thing that I've noticed is when they do put black guys in front of the camera on TV, then after a while they come out as being homosexual, or they're very, very soft, and like you could tell they don't use a hoe, they don't do their lawn, and there's something very effeminate about the ones that they allow to make some money. And there's just certain things that you just see it. I don't know if you've noticed that, but you just see it. It's just a matter of time before they come out and say, "Oh, I'm homosexual." Just a matter of time. But they're very, very
Right.
effeminate.
Right. Yeah, you raised a very good point. Whether it's a brother like Don Lemon
Oh
or
God! But yeah,
brother
I wondered about him at first, and then when he came, I was like, "Oh my God, he's too good." Oh God, I cannot believe it.
Matt Robinson back in the day.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep,
Anytime
yep,
you see
yep.
that they're allowed to make money, after a while they come out and they say, "Yeah, I'm black, but I'm not a black man."
Mm-hmm.
They're like more like Coco than anything else.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
so
You're right.
again, who they allow to make money, and who gets the wealth. What are they doing? How much ass are they showing? How many dicks do they need to have in their mouths? And it's just I don't know. But I do think we accomplished something with this streaming today. I think that we should look at this assimilation, always trying to be that technician to the white man, or that living next to him. Like when they run from us, we run behind them. It's really a tragedy that we cannot tolerate ourselves. We cannot stomach our own selves.
Well, that's part of what I call the human marketplace. Is that there's a human marketplace out there. That human marketplace traffics not only in human capital human bodies, but it also is advanced in dealing with human minds and taking those minds and transforming those minds into really what they want, how they want their story to be told. It's not about our story, it's about their story, how they want their story to be parlayed across the board and who they want to present their story. They have to have a black face sitting up there with a microphone. And that's why they whisper into that person's ear. They're constantly talking in that person's ear. But that same thing happens on a different level in the boardrooms across America and across the world. There may be a black face, but who's whispering in that black ear? There's a 95% black population in Barbados and a 5% white or other population on the island of Barbados. Who is the ear? Who is the earpiece in the ears of the Prime Minister, the Minister of Education? Who's whispering? Who is whispering in those people's ears? So everywhere you go, it's the same thing. You could be a 95% black country, the same apartheid laws that ruled in South Africa rule in Barbados. It's just called something else, and they're just doing it in a different way. So we are still in the same place where we are, and it's going to take people that's strong, people that's willing to stand the test of time, people that's sick and tired of being sick and tired, like Fannie Lou Hamer said, to stand up, be their own people, be not afraid to take on the mantle of responsibility that it takes to get to the next level on this journey. And because this is a journey, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And a lot of people, they're not willing to do that because, again, they've become the most comfortable slaves on the planet. They've got their house, they've got their mortgage, they've got their car. They're suffering from the illusion of inclusion. They feel that what they've got is enough to hold them and tie them and their families over, so they don't want to make waves. It's the person that swims against the current that usually ends up catching the bait. A lot of people, a lot of us don't want to swim against the current. We want to be told what we want to hear. And sometimes you got to come out of your comfort zone and be told what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And that's the case that we find ourselves in.
Yeah. So any final thoughts?
I just wish that we can have a national conversation like we've been having today with our own people. I just wish we could talk and disagree without being disagreeable. That we could say, well, no, I don't want to make this personal like you said about me. Let's talk in the context of it being about us and what we can change. And, we could disagree without, like I said, being disagreeable. But at the point of where we are civil and that we are offering each other something, right? Even if it's just an idea or two, and that we are kind with each other, and gentler with each other. And if we're able to do that, maybe there's hope going down the road for us as brothers with sisters. And we learn to deal with our women with more respect. I think it's a sad day when brothers disrespect women. We call them out of their name. We don't see them in the context as being as we would see our mother. If you're a black man born to a black woman, how then can you not see that you need to respect her for her beautiful black Africanness, for her the empress that's in her? So at the end of the day, it's all about how we how we ease up to dealing with issues, how we solve issues. Are we going to solve issues with the gun or with the olive branch? Are we going to become cerebral as we approach each other in thinking and espousing our views rather than through an area of physicality, which is what's expected of us by the Europeans who run this place and everywhere
You
else?
see,
So,
I want to bring the show to an end, but I have a question. Not a question. I do not like asking people questions. We're just talking. When we had the Rwanda slaughter, 100 days, they said, of them killing each other, and they almost killed like 1 million of each other. And then they had people come and say, well, who is the the Hutu and who is the Tutsi, who they, I mean, they looked alike. You can't even say that one was lighter skin than the other. These are Africans in Africa that look alike. From any outside person coming, they look alike. Black people. What do you think about something like that? I mean, if that is happening in Africa, and that happened, that's not that long ago. That happened, right before the 20th, the 21st century. That was 1994 or whatever. That was not long ago that happened in our history. What?
Like I told you earlier, we got to stop looking at the word black as an adjective. Look at black as a noun. If you're a Nigerian and you go to Ghana, you're not a black Nigerian. You're a Nigerian. If you're a Ghanaian and you go to Senegal, you're not a black Ghanaian. You're a Ghanaian. If you're a Barbadian and you go to Trinidad and Tobago, you're not the only qualifiers that necessitate the usage of the adjective black happens to be in America,
Well,
and that's been done.
I wasn't looking at black as being an adjective. I'm looking at black as a race. It was a noun. So I'm
That's
saying,
a noun.
yeah,
Yeah.
I always use it as a noun. When I say black as an adjective, I'm talking about a piece of clothing or the tire on my bicycle or something that, whatever, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about black people, and that's a noun. And if I knew names,
Mm-hmm.
I can call them by name, and that's even a better noun, proper noun. So, just,
Right.
but what I'm saying is that these two groups, these two particular tribes in Africa, shooting each other up. I guess one was more dominant than the other. But at the end of the day, a million people dead in Africa, two sets of people that look the same. What's we talked earlier about Africa's starting a war because of the slave trade to avenge the white Europeans and the Portuguese and whoever else who showed up on their shores to get slaves. But that will not happen. That's not going to happen because they have conflicts even there within themselves, their own selves.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that happened at a turbulent period in the history of the continent of Africa. And the people who had the ability to solve that in the United States under the Clinton administration, they did absolutely nothing for 30 days.
Exactly.
And
Nothing happened.
that was simply, yeah,
They've, they've,
nothing. I
they've,
mean,
go-
that simply happened.
they've gone into other countries for less than that, and this is over a million people dead, and nothing happened really. Nothing.
So that speaks volumes when it comes to people talking about Clinton being the first black president and Hillary Clinton being so pro-black.
But do we?
People, people
But then again, do you want
can remember that.
Do you want the American military going into Africa? I mean, do you want them going in there for any particular reason at all? It's a catch-22 situation. When
They've only gone into Africa, though. They've gone into Africa. They're in Africa all the time. I've been in the United States military. They've gone
yeah,
into Africa all the time.
we're not
They went
saying.
into Bosnia and Herzegovina. They went into Bosnia and Herzegovina. They went into the middle of European strife and misery and former Soviet satellites. They went in there and solved problems. So why didn't they choose to go to Africa? Because it wasn't politically expedient for them.
Yeah, exactly.
They had something to gain from Rwanda. Had they had something to gain from Rwanda, could the United States gain something from Rwanda? They would have gone in. They chose not to go in because it wasn't politically, socially, economically expedient. Those are the things that America needs to invade somebody. They went into Grenada. Why did they go to Grenada? Why did they go to a small, tiny island like Grenada? Because they wanted to fire shots across the bow to Cuba. So we do what's convenient for us, right? Period. Right? Power is the only source that satisfies man. Absolute power.
I just think that a lot is happening in the world that's not being talked about. Yes, we have social media that is making the world come together. It's making the world a smaller place. I'm thankful for that. But I think a lot is not being talked about, especially when it comes to genocides and the dismantling of human beings. I mean, just totally dismantling that that particular set of people, emotionally, mentally, physically, people that never thought about self destruction become prostitutes after these things happened. They just not themselves. They will do anything to survive after. It's just a horrible world in a lot of aspects we can look at, that we can say this is really, earth is really something. So when people, well, I don't even say earth. When you say heaven, when you say up, you say down. When you say black, you say white. So when you say heaven, you cannot say heaven and earth. You have to say heaven and hell. So it's like we probably are in some sort of hell, and we have to make the best of it.
But we also have to be mindful of the fact that the word right, RIGHT, is an abstract thought that proves nothing to white folks. Our definition of right and their definition of right will always be will always be different, because to them the word right, RIGHT, is an abstract thought that proves absolutely nothing. Well, I was right. Well, you were right, but you're still wrong. And you're wrong, but you're still right. They always juxtapose whatever they want to juxtapose. And for countries that are developing or third world countries, there will always be a lab, experimental lab for white people. There will always be experimenting as far as economics, as far as socio-economics, as far as globally socio-economic issues, always be an experiment to them, because that's how they divide and conquer.
Yeah,
Always.
they also said that part of the experimentation on black people and black enslaved was to actually make them hate other black people, and that's something that you see that resonates um, within the islands. You can see that experimentation that took hold, and black people pulling each other down and hating each other and not getting along. We see that that part has worked. So it's just a lot of things that need to be talked about. And I don't know if talking, do you think talking makes things better? Do you think education is going to make things better?
I love to be able to talk to my people. How else will I reach them? How else can I love them? I love them because they love me. I love them because they criticize me. Because they criticize me, they know me. Because I'm able to grow from that. And if we don't talk, we take up guns. We take up machetes. We take up, because that's part of our tribal nature. So I'd rather have people thinking, because when you're talking, you're thinking, you should be, than taking up guns and doing stuff that's violent and self-destructive. So I love to talk to my people. I love to disagree with them without being disagreeable. I love to learn from them like I'm learning from you. I love to be cuddled by them, to be entertained and engaged by them. I love that. And if we're not doing that, we need to be doing it more. We need to be telling ourselves that we are beautiful, black, strong, and proud, that we are, God has gifted us with so many things that we should be proud of this day. We should be talking to each other. I shouldn't be seeing you or walking on the next side of the street and chance to say hello to you, no matter your disposition, no matter your economic struggle. I should be willing to embrace those things, and you should be willing to embrace those things about me. If we're not doing those things, that's because we have learned too good, too well from the white man. So at the end of the day, I wanna embrace my people. I wanna have a conversation with my people, and I wanna know that they tell me their honest opinions about me. Well, Vic, I think you're too haughty. I think you're too arrogant. I think you're too self-defined, and maybe you need to tone down a little bit of that. And I can deal with that because they're telling me only out of love. When we talk to each other, seriously talk to each other, we ain't talking to each other out of enmity. We're talking to each other out of love. Because you know what? Enmity and hatefulness and stuff like that, that's learned behavior. That's not really what comes from the spirituality of blackness. The spirituality of blackness does not offer that. That's something that's learned in a system that's repressive and cold, like here in the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, where divide and conquer is preached. That's not preached in our homes in the Caribbean and elsewhere, to hate people, to not share. Never.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. We've been talking now for over an hour. I don't know about you, but I usually get very tired after a while. We can come back
No.
on. Excuse me. Wow, we can come back. See, my mouth, my whole mouth is dry. We can come.
Yeah.
We can come back on tomorrow if you want. What's tomorrow? Tomorrow's Friday. Yeah, we could come back on tomorrow
Right.
because we can
No.
since we are streaming. It's not being one part is not one part is being taped and the other part is just streaming. If you hear it, you hear it, and when it's gone, it's gone. But we can come back anytime you want to talk. It doesn't have to be blog talk all the time because blog talk is only half an hour, and it's a lot of setting up for that. But streaming is great. You can just have a thought and be having a dream or thinking about something. You can say let's go and just talk. You can just talk and people can hear us if they are not at work or if they care to listen in.
No worries. Appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak and at least listening to me. Sometimes you just need to listen to each other.
Yeah, someone is writing in, someone is typing in saying that there were warehouses of cutlasses and people were shot. People made cutlasses because bullets were expensive, and they said that they used to use the cutlasses to cut women's bellies and pull children out and chop up the children next to them. They're talking about the warfare, and Russians were behind it. Boy, he's saying that this person is saying that they cried for days after it happened because he was a child when it happened. He's talking about the Rwanda um, genocide.
Yeah, I gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, that was
he was saying that
that was
priests. He
crazy.
was saying that priests were turning on their congregations and suddenly chopping them up. Everybody was turning against everybody, I guess, and chopping up and killing and all the blood and the hate. And he's saying that can you imagine the type of hate it takes to chop people up? Yeah, if the person who's writing in is writing in, you should stop now because we are about to get off
Yeah.
the
All right.
we are about to get off the air. Thank you so much, Victor.
Thank you, Sherry. God bless. Take care of
Okay,
yourself.
bye bye.
Bye bye. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm still on, and I don't know if this person's going to stop typing, but he is saying that yeah, it was pretty traumatic for him hearing and reading about that particular Rwanda war, civil war, genocide, whatever it was. It was pretty traumatic for him. So yeah, we live in a very very fearful world. We live in a world that if people were to really know what the world is all about, fear will well up inside you somewhere. If you're human and you have emotion, somewhere fear would try to enter. But you've got to find a place. You have to find a spot on this earth where you can breathe, where you don't feel frightened all the time. And I found my little spot, and I can just hope and wish and send out my good feelings that people can find their little place on this earth where they're not afraid, because that's the worst thing for me. For me, being afraid was the worst experience of my life. I don't deal well with fear. I have to be a woman, I have to be a warrior, I have to swim upstream, I have to go against the tide. It's my nature to question things and to speak out when something grave has happened. I need to speak out. I need to let people know. It's like I'm always going to sound the warning and blow that whistle to let people know, hey, there's a pitfall coming up, or don't go that way. There are lions in the bushes if you go that way. It's just my nature to do what I do. So, you just have to be brave in life. Just be brave and to put your best foot forward. And I want to thank people for listening, whoever was able to listen. And if you weren't able to listen on the Ustream, we are on YouTube, and that will load in a few minutes after I finish this particular show, and once I stop broadcasting, you will be able to listen to this particular broadcast because I'm going to put it on Facebook and wherever. Thank you so very much. Have a wonderful Thursday, and I am going to veg out from now on. Okay, bye bye.